leadership. We will now ask
Mu-
Federici, who will join us virtually from the United States, Managing Director for K2 Integrity, former chair of the Egmont Group, and former president of the FIU in Argentina. Mr. Federici, please join us.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much. With your permission, I would like to address the audience in Spanish. Buenos días.
Good morning to everyone. I would like to start by thanking my friends, Mr. Robert Pittenger, Alejo Campos, and all of the participants of the board for the Parliamentary Forum for Intelligence and Security. And I would like to congratulate you on this in-person event. I would also like to thank and congratulate the Panamanian authorities for their hospitality and the logistics. I am so sad not to be there. I would have loved to see your beautiful country once again. But I'm going to start by talking about the fight against money laundering and how it is a global effort based on consensus and how it must be dealt with. The crime that we pursue are transnational crimes. The threats are also, in many cases, transnational, and especially for a country like Panama, they are threats that are, without a doubt, transnational. I say especially in Panama because of its characteristics in its jurisdiction can make it especially attractive for those who have committed serious crimes in other countries and who would like to take advantage of the vulnerabilities in order to launder those funds. This is a global problem which involves all of us and affects us all negatively. We're living in a globalized world where societies in one jurisdiction are created in one place, open bank accounts in others, and receive funds from another jurisdiction. They are being used to often do regular and legal business, but they can also be used by criminals and who seek to develop that appearance of legal activity. This represents a problem, not just for our countries individually, but for the world as a whole. So there must be change. And we can see that the consensus that we have achieved over the last 30 years has created a global strategy which allows us to fight against money laundering and terrorism financing. Expressing these standards, these international standards that all countries are called to meet, is very important. This is one of the fundamental pillars of our strategy. Because when we talk about threats and global crime, our response must be global and it must be homogeneous. That homogeneous nature is fundamental in order to create a dissuasive nature at a global level so that they cannot find places to hide themselves and to commit their crimes. This is fundamental to achieve effective cooperation between different countries, which allows for precise, complete, and opportune reaction to this call to cooperate with any country that needs support from another. Only with a serious commitment from every country to the consensus that are in our norms and standards, only then will we truly be effective at a collective level to protect the integrity of the international financial system, the internal integrity and security of each country itself. The global financial system is so important to creating fluidity for production and for the movement of productivity and global commerce throughout the world. preserving the stability and security of the international financial community is key to continue growing and developing globally. For that reason, any factor that puts the global financial system at risk is and will be rejected by the international community. And that is a risk factor, a fundamental risk factor, which is the lack of integrity or the lack of security in the global financial institutions. Integrity is so important. It is everything that creates health and security in the financial system, and it must be protected in order to prevent stability risks and therefore risks to growth and development. Money laundering and terrorism financing create a significant risk for the financial system, and countries that do not take on a serious commitment to face financial crime will see that their internal stability is threatened, their growth is threatened as well. First of all, because they open a space to organized transnational crime, giving them power, and money is exactly how they get power. That is what gives them firepower, corruption power. All of that comes from their economic power. And the end that they seek is economic benefits, not just to control, consolidate, grow their power, but also to be able to use their earnings. So everything that favors money laundering is contributing to the growth of organized crime, whether they're operating in one country or another. And for that reason, it is a threat to the integrity of the international financial system. We want to close all spaces to organized crime, all opportunities to act within any financial system. Let us remember that threats to peace and global security, like terrorism, seek to use the financial system to support their operations. Terrorists would like to have mechanisms that allow them to gather funds and to put funds in the hands of those who will plan and execute attacks. Any country that offers a space for terrorism financing, whether it is actually leading to direct actions or whether those criminal groups actually reside in that country, regardless, they represent a threat to global peace. Because, as I said, the goal is to close all possible opportunity windows to terrorists to have access to funds that can be used to create harm. The expectation, the global expectation for all countries, is that we take on a strong and serious commitment to avoiding, to criminalizing, to acting against and preventing these kinds of international crimes. Over the years, our perspective has evolved, but from the beginning, one of the key principles was involving not just the public sector, but also the private sector. And this is simple and straightforward. On one hand, opportunities to prevent and fight against these activities occur many times in the private sector, but also those who benefit are mutual. We benefit mutually in working against this. So global consensus calls us to align with a strategy that will allow us to prevent and mitigate these risks. Countries that do not commit seriously to this will become like a black sheep in the system, being rejected by it. The global strategy consists in each country understanding its risks and deploying actions to mitigate it effectively. It seeks to work with the international systems so that intelligence and information can go from one country to another, allowing countries to fight against the criminals. It allows for supervision of financial entities as well as the designated non-financial services in fulfilling their commitments in AML and CTF. Aligned with their risks. It seeks for people and judiciary organizations to not be used to fund to fund or finance terrorism, and it seeks for information related to these issues to be shared globally without any impediment. It also seeks for technology to be used by the relevant government entities, and that all financing activities will be investigated in an effective way, that criminals will go through a judiciary system and will be punished in a dissuasive way, and this will allow for the dissuasion of those who desire to continue collecting these kinds of funds. The global economy is protected this way, but from threats of terrorism, and the system itself is protected in its integrity. Panama has not been successful in effectively applying these strategies. The most recent evaluation of the FATF showed that there were significant deficiencies in the system which have not yet been resolved. While Panama has adopted measures to improve its systems, including finalizing and publishing the national risk analysis of terrorism financing, as well as others, including analysis of their free zones, they have also adopted legislation about final beneficiaries and others, and they are working better with different organizations and have taken steps forward, but there are still many things to be done, and Panama must find a way to improve those strategic deficiencies, to understand the risks, and to do an appropriate analysis of their corporate sector in order to understand whose job it is to develop those policies at a national level and apply them. There should be a risk-based focus in sectors, as well as working with designated non-financial institutions. And there should be an appropriate application of sanctions that are persuasive when those duties are not met by those institutions. There should be information relevant about the final beneficiaries in terms of those who are the beneficial owners, and there should be an appropriate monitoring of offshore organizations, monitoring risk and the inappropriate use by beneficiaries, implementing different measures to avoid inappropriate actions by stakeholders. They must continue using their intelligence that they receive from the UIF and their financial intelligence units. And all of these different activities are still pending with the FATF. For this reason, it is very important that Panama continue fighting to make these changes. At this time, in the process of implementation of the global strategy, the international community seeks not just to meet these formal standards, but also to effectively implement, which is what allows for the mitigation of risk, and to also understand how well the system is meeting its goals. In order to finalize, the fundamental pillar of which this strategy rests upon is trust. Countries continue to be trustworthy to meet their commitments in the fight against money laundering and financial crime. This is not about fancy words. It's not just about the sanctions or the institutional reforms. Trust is measured fundamentally by actions. That is to say, effective implementation. So my advice to my dear Panamanian friends is to focus on those pending activities, to implement the action plan that you committed to, and to do it quickly without losing any more time. And in this way, you will recover the trust of the community, and you will see a difference because of that. With that, thank you very much.